Hello and welcome everyone to the LCS Challengers League Grand Finals for our playoffs for spring 2023. Shout out to everybody joining us from watching Maryville qualify for the relegation tournament in the second qualifiers. Shout out to Maryville. Round of applause, everybody. But our show today will, of course, be the finals for the Challengers League itself, where two teams remain to see who will walk away victorious. I'll be your host for today. You can call me King because I got Beatdown calling in remote from Canada. Beatdown, how's Canada doing?
Still cold, unfortunately, but I'm happy to be here regardless.
Well, we're happy to have you. You're looking snazzy. And we have, of course, tradition here on the Challengers League broadcast. A player coming on to join us. We have Dragku from TSM. Welcome, Dragku.
Hi.
Awesome to have you. Now, you are from Australia originally. You have one Australian player to watch for in this series. Can you name that player? Do you know offhand? Lost?
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But he's New Zealand. So.
Oh, okay. You know what? That's on me. That's on me.
Then I could.
Fair enough. But either way, we're happy to have you. How was your season? How was moving to LA?
I would say is what?
Rolf is yelling at us from across the room, by the way. We are in the Casa de Caster, if you couldn't tell from the setup. So shout out to anybody who watched the podcast. But yes.
Oh yeah, coming to LA, I think it was I don't know, it just made me bulk up. You know, it's a lot more
Bulking
calories
season,
than
yeah.
Australia.
Oh, literally, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
literally.
Are you hitting any new numbers in the gym?
Definitely I can see my body weight go up, but also my the weight that I can lift. But I think it's definitely taken a big toll on me because I just eat a lot here.
Do you think that you could lift more than any of the players about to play today?
Oh, for sure, 100%.
For sure.
100%,
Okay.
100%.
All right. Do you think you could lift more than our MVP?
Oh, depends on who the MVP is.
Depends on who the MVP is, because we've been teasing throughout the weeks leading up to today for number one most valuable prospect. We've had 5 through 2. Let's take a look at who's walking away with number one on our most valuable prospect list.
Our pick for the most valuable prospect of spring 2023 is Mir. When we found out Mir was joining the league, the expectations were relatively high, given some of his experiences and accomplishments, but he still managed to surprise. Mir's early games were a highlight of his play this split. He led junglers in gold diff at 15. He was 4th in first blood percentages out of all junglers and was only a first blood victim one time. Mir consistently showed an ability to play towards win cons, whether that be for his laners or for himself.
We knew coming into the split, Mir was a mechanical talent with a killer Lee Sin. But with the meta being so different from what we know him for, we really got to see how intelligent of a jungler Mir is as well. The biggest compliment I can give Mir is his base level of play was so damn high and consistent. This guy rarely makes mechanical mistakes or poor decisions and is always an asset to his team. We believe Mir is an LCS level jungler. With his journey back through a developing region, now Challengers League, we think he's rounded out his gameplay to once again be able to compete at the highest level.
So shout outs to Mir for picking up number one in our most valuable prospect list. Now, a reminder, that is prospect, not player. So the way that we determine that is adding up how many wins we think they would get in their first year in LCS worth 1 point, and wins in their second year in LCS worth 2 points. Dragku, now you have an interesting history here with Mir back when he was Arthur, because you just played with him last split.
Oh yeah. Well, we went to Worlds together. Yeah, he was actually a really good player. He played with Chovy, so that's kind of expected.
True.
I do know in 2020 season, I did knock his team out.
Ooh,
Yeah, so,
okay.
Chiefs. I mean, he was on Dire Wolves, but yeah. So shout out to Mira. Well played, man. But I still destroyed you.
It's so funny to realize that I mean, you're both coming over at the same time and you have some history together. Now that you know who the MVP is, can you lift more than him?
Oh well, since it's Mir. I mean, last year he was kind of very lazy. I'm not sure about this year, so definitely.
All right. Beatdown, what are your thoughts on Mir as MVP?
I mean, I worked on the video with Cubby. He is definitely, well, we had a bit of conversation about who we were going to choose, but Mir made the most sense. Just being, like Cubby said, that very consistent player, the lowest we've ever seen in terms of level of play from him this split was still incredible. And that consistency, the fact that he made very few mistakes from start to finish is a big part of why we think, especially after having such a long career, having to bounce around, that he still has so much more room to grow.
And we actually got a chance to see the reaction of Mir receiving the trophy. We gave this to him ahead of his match yesterday. So even though he's not here in the finals, he made it into top 3 with Team Liquid Challengers. And it's so funny. One of the first things he said, I mean, we had Spawn give a couple of words, but then the first thing Mir said was like, look, I don't feel like I deserved this. Like he was so humble in receiving the trophy of like, I don't know why. And then even afterwards he came up, he was like, Kangas, why did I win this? And I was like, well, I explained the criteria and everything. He was like, I feel like I need to be better still. It's like, well, I think
Honestly,
that's also a mentality that you need to have as a player. Draco, what are your thoughts on that? Like kind of like constant growth mentality.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best mentality to have, especially when your goal is LCS.
Yeah.
I could definitely say like that's kind of my mentality, but I do think Mir actually does deserve it. I think he was definitely probably the best jungler in academy, even though tier lists didn't rate him that high. But like he was like very. I think he like carried that Team Liquid roster quite hard.
He was a standout performer on the roster for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's in general something that we said. And we actually had the lower bracket finals. So let's take a look at how the finals went on the lower bracket, because it was Team Liquid Challengers up against Cloud9. And Mir gave a hell of an effort with everybody else on the team, but it was Cloud9 that took this. Draku, you and I were watching a little bit together yesterday as well. Did you have any big takeaways from this series, specifically from Cloud9? We've talked about Team Liquid, Mir got MVP, but Cloud9 were the winners. What was your impression of how they played, how they approached the game?
I think Fake got kind of got caught out quite a bit, but I think C9 they usually get carried quite a bit by the bot lane, but Diplex like actually like he played very well. Like I remember like that LeBlanc game, he was kind of like popping off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Team Liquid, it was just kind of unfortunate. Maybe on a better day they would have won.
And beatdown, it wasn't just LeBlanc. Diplex on the Swain as well. This fight here, Bradley almost carries this fight, but Diplex is the difference maker, and I think he was a big difference maker in the series.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about it on the day. The solo laners for Cloud9, they really stepped up to the plate against Team Liquid Challengers. And even though Team Liquid, they fought valiantly, they had a lot of good plans, a lot of good early game leads for the most part, and most of the games in the series. But Cloud9, I mean, a lot of these individual performances, these good macro plays, you can really tell that they learned from their loss against Dignitas. And I mean, I talked to Zazel going into yesterday's matchup. He even told me how they understood the mistakes that they made going into them, and we'll get into that later, but they feel like they have worked on that going into yesterday and of course today.
Cloud9 now get the rematch against Dignitas. This is the upper bracket finals where Cloud9, I mean, air quotes upset maybe. As we take a look at the bracket here, you can see how things played out there. It was number 1 versus number 2 seed. Hard to call that an upset. I had Cloud9 favorited to win that series, so I was surprised to see Dignitas take it in 3 games. But it's been a long tournament. That is a lot of games played. Dragku, give me your thoughts on how the bracket played out, because this is our first time getting to chat with you on broadcast. What were the big surprises here from the tournament?
I think, well, as you said, like that C9 versus Dig series, I definitely thought C9 was going to take it.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I wasn't alone.
I had my money on C9.
Sure.
And then well, I mean, obviously, like TSM, like we got smashed, so I was kind of just watching a lot of the tournament. Like we upset CLG, and then like we just got destroyed by 100T, and then wildcard, stuff happened on our roster, and it was a disaster. But I think watching NA like Academy, I think it was actually way better than those. It's definitely a good experience.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, we're happy to have you, of course. Thoughts on... So you got to play against some of those developmental rosters, some of the provisional rosters, like Wildcard, like Fear. Those are kind of the top 2. What was your thoughts on their play compared to, like, the Challengers League's play? Did you see a big difference?
I didn't see, actually, a big difference. I think at the end of the day, like, we're all Challenger players. I think Fear was definitely... like they're good. They're just good. Like that's all I can really say about Fear. Like they're like even Trevor. Like he's old, but like I think he's still improving.
He's 27.
Yeah, shout out to him.
If he's old, I'm old. That feels bad, but yeah, in esports.
Shout out to my fellow Fugs. Trevor. He's gonna do good.
Yeah, the story of the provisional teams was fantastic, but of course the matchup ahead of us today will be Cloud9 Challengers versus Dignitas Challengers. So let's get into breaking down what we expect from these teams. Cloud9 Challengers and the roster that they've put together. Fake God versus his old org in Dignitas. Beatdown, what are some of the highlights here? Obviously Diplex was the kind of later season roster swap, so we'll talk about that later, but in general, what do you think of when you see Cloud9 Challengers?
I mean, the first thing that always came to mind for me was this bottom lane. Lost and Zeyzal, we touted time and time again as the best in the league. And I still stand by that, especially when we consider who's left in the tournament. And the fact that this team overall, we had the resurgence of Fake God throughout the rest of the regular split, and the fact that Cloud9 have just continued so much of their dominance, whether it's Diplex or MNS, is the thing to really talk about with this team.
Yeah, the roster swap did not slow them down. Speaking of, we also have Dignitas Challengers, their opponents today. Second seed coming into the tournament. They are the kind of raid boss here of the entire event, though, making their way through the upper bracket finals, already taking down Cloud9. Draku, after a split of competing and seeing these guys, you got to play against them in the regular season. What's your impression of Dignitas Challengers?
Dignitas Challengers, I think, well, no offense, I think ever since Tomo kind of left, I think their bot lane is a tiny bit weaker. Not saying Spawn's bad, but I think Diamond and Tomo had like a lot of synergy going on.
Okay.
So yeah, that was kind of, I think it like took a hit on their roster. But I think like their top lane is probably gonna gap Fake God, in my opinion, this series.
Wow. You believe in Hoon
Yeah,
in time?
I think Hoon's pretty good. Insanity is pretty good too, but Diplex is like gonna match him quite well. I think this game is gonna be which bot lane plays better. And jungle.
Well,
definitely.
we actually have a representation of the roster swap for Dignitas. So let's take a look at that, because Spawn did come in week 6. Now, you said in your words as a player that you think that as a whole, the team may be playing at a lower level. What are the differences in playstyle that you see? Because when we look at the difference between Tomo and Spawn, we see Spawn's strengths being in teamfights, being more in late game decision making, rarely positioning incorrectly when it gets to these big stressful moments, as opposed to Tomo, where his strengths were more kind of in lane, maybe like that synergy you were talking about with Diamond. Are we on the mark there? Or do you have any
definitely.
different
When because like obviously I scrim every team.
Yeah.
And scrimming these guys when they had Tomo and Diamond, their bot lane was kind of like cringe to first. They were like really good, yeah. They were just perma play for lane, and the jungle would just dive us level 3, and you know we can't do anything about it. But you know Zeyzal and Lost are really good too, so it's gonna be a banger.
Well, I will say, last time they faced off against each other, Spawn and Diamond did win the bot lane matchup more often than not. So, if history's anything to say, we might be off the ball there. But let's take a look at Cloud9's roster changes throughout the split, because, of course, they had the one big notable one. MNS was leading the league in solo kills for up until, I think, even most of this bracket tournament. Hoon overtook him eventually. But Diplex did come in week 5, and, in my opinion, has still been playing incredibly well. Beatdown... The depth of mid lane talent at Cloud9 right now, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. And we said it yesterday. We really want to like keep this going where this is not, and they even said it's not a punishment of Diplex in any sort of way. It's rewarding MNS and that incredibly high tier gameplay he was showing us for these first couple of weeks in the NACL until they gave him the shot in LCS. I mean, it was... Cloud9 was 7-2 before Diplex came down, and it feels like Cloud9 Challengers, they haven't missed a beat since the mid lane swap. And a cool note on both sides. I mean, the fact that both of these teams got here is amazing because they had to make these roster swaps to service their LCS team.
Exactly. That happens often at this level of play. Even though this is finals, even though it's a big deal for these players, if LCS needs reinforcements, oftentimes they're taking top priority. So developmental leagues, that's just one of the realities of it. But we've said it a few times, this is a rematch of the upper bracket finals. So let's remind everybody of what happened last time around. Cloud9 did come in as #1 seed, but stumbled a little bit against their competition. Now, Draku, you mentioned that you identified it as top lane was the biggest difference here?
Yeah, I think you know it's Hooning time. That's all I can really say. Hoon is I don't know. I think I got auto-filled once versus him in solo queue, and I fought his Wrath. I got destroyed. So, yeah, his laning is good. Do
you remember the matchup that you were playing?
I think he was on Cassante. I don't remember what I was on. I was probably just playing a tank, but I got my ass kicked.
Who's Cassante?
It's Hooning time.
It is crazy. And again, Beatdown, I want to go back to the fact that Spawn and Diamond actually were more often than not in the 4 games played getting the better of Lost and Zeyzal in lane. Not what we necessarily expected.
No, I mean, Diamond even talked about how, you know, in the interview, I believe it was for this series, where him and Spawn, of course, they've been leveling up, but it was a process. He says, yeah, I've been playing with Tobo for 3 years at this point. So, you know, having to start over again with somebody like Spawn, who's of course skilled, who is of course experienced, was still that learning curve for them. And it feels like they have finally crested over that curve, because look at them now. The way Spawn team fights, we already praised since he joined Challengers League. But the fact that him and Diamond have also really leveled up in terms of laning is so big for them too.
And I got to go back to the mid lane. I think Diplex could be a huge difference maker here. Last time around, Insanity was actually getting the better of him in the lane.
Yes.
When it just came to the 1v1, I'm thinking back to that Ari versus Silas game. He was like, I think 50 CS up by the third dragon fight. It was kind of crazy. But Diplex, even when he's behind, he still comes back and is still impactful regardless. It feels like he's that type of player you just can't shut down. And here's a look back at even their match against Team Liquid here, where Diplex's champ pool is expanding. We saw his LeBlanc a second ago. Now we're seeing his Swain. He's pulling out very different styles of champions and still finding great success. Drag, did you ever, I don't remember in the regular season, did you go up against M&S or Diplex when you played?
I first Diplex.
You did
I first M&S in Notice, so.
Okay, yeah, fair. So Diplex, what was the team's comms like about him? Do you remember going back to those stage games?
I think we thought like C9 was still like kind of like the same strength.
Sure.
With both mid laners. It's just that M&S was way better in lane, but Diplex was like more of like a, like he was very good mid game and very good team fighter, as you could see, with his Swain and LeBlanc. He would always be, catching sideways at the perfect time and rotating up, but M&S would just be very lane dominant.
Yeah, that was the biggest difference between the two. Diplex can win lane heavily, but not against everyone. Whereas M&S, it felt like he was able to win lane. I think the only lanes he didn't just dominate was one Insanity game. And I want to say Spyrax actually held his own against him, if my memory serves, from the regular season.
You are right, Kangas.
Yeah. So it's the consistency of just like knowing Diplex will have a lead. Not always going to be there. But Beatdown, tell me if you agree here. I believe that he will always show up and do what he needs to do regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then talking about Insanity too, like he's a player who last year, ever since he didn't make it back into the LCS after his summer split in 21 with Immortals, he immediately started off on 100 Thieves Next, immediately climbing down from essentially the bottom of the North American talent pipeline. And ever since then, he's just been showing up and showing out everyone that he plays against here. Even last year, while he was still on Dignitas in Proving Grounds, when they made second place, if not for Harry turning up in playoffs, he would have been the best mid laner at Proving Grounds.
And Insanity has also had an incredible split this time around, this tournament. He has been hard carrying a lot of games. His Asol, his Viger. He's going for more scaling picks, which is not necessarily what I always thought Insanity as a player to lean towards. But hey, it's getting them wins. It's getting them wins specifically against Cloud9, as we saw in that last series. He picked the Viger into the... Actually, I want to say Diplex even picked the Vel'Koz into the Vigar, but it was cool to see just all these wacky mid lane champ pools picks come out. But of course, mid lane is its own matchup. We also wanted to take some time to highlight the jungle, because we feel from watching the tape, from seeing how these teams play, jungle could be the difference maker in this series. Beatdown, the difference between XU and Tomio, we feel that both of them, if either are set behind, both of their teams can struggle because of it.
For sure. And I think even though we've seen that throughout the split and even throughout playoffs, it's really interesting too to talk about Tomio and how Cloud9 really came back in their series against TL yesterday, because TL are a team who we respected for getting early game leads and being really smart about closing them out. Tomio in game one was actually set very far behind, but the rest of the team, the rest of the map, and I mean, shout outs to Fake God, including Tomio, managed to actually make a lot of smart, calculated plays to narrow the lead, and they ended up winning that game.
And I want to note something here, because the stats would make you think Tomio, with higher first blood percentage, higher KDA, higher damage percentage, the more aggressive jungler, even higher gold per minute in the first 15 minutes. But XU actually generally goes for more ganks. It just doesn't mean that he's always going to be getting the first kill from those ganks. Often he's setting up his team to get those first kills and then feeding gold into them. So different style between the two players, of course. But that's one matchup we wanted to highlight. We want to hear your thoughts. Let us know who you think's taking away the win here, Dignitas Challengers or C9C. You can spam it in chat right now while we give our thoughts. I'm going to go last because that's my privilege as the host. Dragco, I'm going to throw it to you. Give us a prediction. Who do you have taking the series in the best of 5?
Honestly, I think you can go 3-2 either way. I think it's going to be a 5-game banger. I think, like I kind of, both teams have quite a few of my friends, so I don't really want to, have a bias towards each team, but I think C9's bot lane might be the difference today.
Ooh.
Sorry, Diamond, but you know, the bot lane.
You got to go with your Oath brethren,
Yeah.
right? And Lost. Yeah, makes sense. Beatdown. Who you got taking the series?
I also agree that it's going to be a 5-game banger, but I'm going to say Dignitas.
Dignitas.
Yep.
All right. Beatdown, I'm in agreement. I actually have Dignitas taking this one as well, and I think it's a 3-1. I think we get a repeat of the upper bracket finals where it went 4 games, not 5. Yeah. And the one game that Cloud9 were able to win, it was because that was the game that bot lane got a double kill early on and Lost was accelerated, as opposed to the other games where Spawn and Diamond were actually the ones getting their own leads. So we got 2 Dignitas and a Cloud9.
Yep.
We're even split on the desk, but of course, let us know what you think below in the chat. And with that said, I mean, that's pretty much everything we have to cover. Draku, we've gone over our opinions of the broadcast. What do you think is going to be the most impactful, difference maker in this series? You mentioned bot lane. Yeah. Are you going to double down on that, or do you think there's something else?
I also think it's going to be jungle. Depends on what happens with Exu. Like, I think Exu is really good, but I still think Tomio is probably better.
Ooh.
I think if Exu is allowed to like get stuff early, like done, then like it's gonna favor Dig. But if not, I think Tomio is gonna like take over the game by just because he's really good like mid game. He farms a lot, gets like a jungle lead, and then he makes very smart decisions. So.
Now, something that we've joked about on broadcast, I want to hear your thoughts as a player before we get ready for pick and ban, is Tomio as a jungler. We see him Beatdown. I know that we've joked about it on broadcast together last time we were casting, is oftentimes it feels sometimes like his team is kind of like throwing him out there. Like, go get him, Tomio, start the fight for us, like get in there. Do you think that that's accurate, or do you see him as a player that is in his own shot calling, saying, no, I'm doing this myself and the team's following him?
I think, well, in competitive, usually, like, you do get pulled around a lot by
teammates. Yeah.
No matter what player you are, if you like, it just happens sometimes.
Okay.
But I think the role of a jungler and a support or a top lane is to be kind of thrown in there,
Yeah.
Like, you need to die for your team sometimes.
Yeah, we're support mains. That's why we die
pretty
so much,
much,
right? Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's all of our opinions of the matchup. So we don't have to wait any longer. Game 1, pick and ban, is ready to go. So we're going to throw it over to our casters to get us into the game.
Thank you so much, Kangas. And here we are. We might not be live in a studio, but we're live in person here for the cast. And I couldn't be more excited to be joined by Covey and Joshi. I'm Mazel, and we should have a lot of fun in store for us. Dignitas versus Cloud9. And I know they were talking about predictions on the desk. I got to get my caster predictions. Joshi, what do you think is going to happen today?
I mean, I heard what Beat was saying and Steve was saying. It looks like a repeat, very likely, of what we saw in the upper bracket finals. I'm here for Dignitas 3-1. Before we get too far, I just have to say I'm super entertained by the fact that Steve has taken over our plays and we have taken over his bedroom. So it's kind of a fair trade at the end of the day.
They have a representative here.
Yeah, somewhere back and forth. Rafa's there on tech support. He'll probably give a thumbs up at some point.
We do our best to manage.
Absolutely.
I will say, prediction-wise, I didn't want to focus on the series. After my VOD review, last night, went over the 3-1 victory that C9 had. I was like, I think it might be close, might be a dig, 3-2. But you know what? I was talking with Diamond before the match. Diamond believes he's going to poop on him.
All right, strong
me,
words.
I'm going to switch a little bit. I'm going to go with the players. I believe in Dig. I'm going to go Dig 3-0. No
yeah,
challenge.
but what did Cloud9 say? Did they say anything?
I don't know. I didn't get as many thoughts from C9.
They were very angry. I mean, we saw the pop-off from Diplex yesterday. He pops off. We just see it. We can't say it again on the stream.
I mean, I if you want me to, something like that.
Am I doing it? Am I doing it at this point? But,
I got it right this time.
Hey, at least we can get a little bit of that. But we're getting into picks and bans for our first game of our best of 5. Our first grand finals in the North American Challengers League. And we have Dignitas here on the blue side, Cloud9 Challengers on that red side. We already get the ban of the Zaya and that Sejuani early.
And I do want to say that, for the first final, I want to give so much credit to these two teams. Not only are they our top 2 seeds that we had coming into this tournament, but people forget, each team had to make roster adjustments in service to their LCS team. The fact that they're both in finals here, having Spawn come in as well as Diplex, it's a lot of props to both those players, their form kept up, but also the team, the staff around them. The fact that even with the change, I mean, that's some of the issues we talk about with Challengers League, like, this isn't the main roster. Sometimes, it's not the main team. You got to be in service to the LCS squad. The fact these guys are still here, I think is so much praise to each squad. Much deserved for them.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And catching us up
Oh, who's cozy?
Get that Wukong ban finally. Yeah, he does look very cozy. Maybe it's a little cold over there in the facility. We also had the Varus, the Caitlyn, and the Vi ban over there as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been a fantastic season for both these guys. We know that both of them were so good throughout the regular season, but it's not going to be the Rakan for Diamond. It is going to be Exu going over towards the Elise, already very heavily indexing towards the early game.
And I think one of the big differences between these two teams is that there are different styles. Dignitas, for me, they've been the team, I like to call them the full court press team. We're going to take winning lanes, a jungler that can get in your face, and we're going to make sure we win the game hard early and play through our lanes. Whereas C9, they like to play for fights later. Elise is definitely that champion that can help you get up in the face of the opponent and do a lot in the early game. See what Exu can do. But
it is worth noting, though, that has changed quite a bit here in playoffs. Even after Spawn has come. During the regular season, both these teams were averaging around 2,000 gold lead by the 15-minute mark. You come into playoffs, they're about 500-600, right? It is a massive difference. Partly they're playing against some of the best teams that we have in the league, but going up against each other, both these teams indexing so heavily on their laning ability will really mean the early game means a lot.
I do like that. I feel like one of the changes to that as well has been Aurelion Sol. Been a big pick for Insanity and Dignitas. And Insanity, he's so flexible with the champions that he can play. We know that his pool is an ocean, and the fact that, Insanity has been able to flex some of those muscles and give Dignitas that late game insurance policy has been really good for them. But at the moment, it's not looking like a lot of late game at all. It's C9. Yes, they have that Zeri Maokai they were running for pretty much all of yesterday until it was denied from them in game 4. But Dignitas,
let's go.
It's all about the laning phase and that early dive. I mean, this draft already, it's going to be Exu going those bottom 3 camps and running the bot lane.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And seeing that kind of early adaptation for Exu is exactly what you want to see for Dignitas early. They were putting a little bit of a highlight on how important this jungle matchup is and the different styles these two players bring to the table. But with that statement here, the Thresh as well, a lot of setup.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch, right? When we watched the upper bracket finals, one of the big predictions we had was that Lost and Zayas was going to be dominating the laning phase. The Spawn and Diamond look good.
Rakan or Annie, you gotta believe. They can flex the Annie. C9 does like to do that, but Rakan, we saw Zazel play yesterday. It's not the greatest matchup in the world of Thresh. It's going to be vulnerable to that 3-wave dive, and this, for me, is very interesting. Because, again, I look at the draft for Dignitas. I mean, it's Draven, Thresh, Elise. Your bot lane's getting dove early. And so this Braum pick, for me, like with Zazel, you don't have that much agency in the first couple levels against Thresh. You're going to be vulnerable to that dive. Braum's a little bit harder to dive than other champions, but still, you got to know what's coming from Dignitas and C9. They're just going to have to weather the storm.
And speaking of what's coming, we're looking at our second phase of bans here. We're looking at those solo lanes, particularly, especially for these Cloud9 bans, trying to take away maybe some of that laning priority that we might see from Dignitas to back end that early game pick from Exu.
It's already feeling like Dignitas have said for this first game. We know that they've been a very flexible team over the past couple of weeks, but it looks like they have indexed saying we're going to win this game in the first 15 minutes, and if we don't, well, like, maybe we're going to see an Aurelion Sol from Insanity, like talked about some of that late game insurance, but this is so over-indexing on the bottom side of the map. The only question I have at this point is, who has been such a dominant laner so far during the regular season, and even during playoffs? He went from being a middle-of-the-pack top laner in Academy and not very good in LCS to being the #1 most solo killingist, one of the best top laners in the laning phase, and he took FakeGod to task last week.
I mean, FakeGod even admitted it in his interview. He's like, hey, like the difference in our performance against Dignitas, why we dropped, a lot of it was Hoon. FakeGod was talking about how he feels like he has different champions that he is prioritizing now that will help him in this matchup today. But if we look at Hoon's stats for the tournament, he is leading all players in gold diff at 15. He's averaging over 1,000 gold diff at 15 in his favor. That's more than the rest of his team. And this is a team that usually the meta plays through bots still. That's just how good Hoon's been in the top lane.
Yeah, and Dignitas definitely trying to ease up some of those matchup discrepancies there as well. They get the bans of the Olaf, the Malphite. Cloud9, on the other hand, they ban away the Jace and that Tristana, so a little bit of flexibility.
Cassante coming out, I gotta say, Fiora could be a big pick, might be that insurance policy later if that bot play doesn't work. You can be really self-sufficient against the Cassante and Hoon. He's got his Gnar too if he wants it. He's very comfortable in that matchup. World's his oyster. I know Hoon as well. Talking with Diamond felt like Hoon was robbed for the most valuable prospect award. I gotta say Hoon was on a couple of our lists. I think Insanity ended up with more votes, but he said, even Impact is asking to like 1v1 Hoon. That's how good Hoon is.
Yeah.
I think
Hoon in
that,
time, baby.
Yeah, I think that him as a player, he's really grown and actually going to be a lot of that aggression as the Renekton comes in with the Elise. So aggression everywhere, man.
Yeah, and we were asking about what it was Insanity was going to be playing. We do see the Renekton come through. It is a decent matchup here in the top side, a very skill-oriented matchup as well. This Dragon would be a little bit surprising to me, but this is another champion that, I mean, we were hearing about it yesterday. I was talking to Concept. He was like, yeah, you just ignore the Viger. He's too tanky. You can't actually kill him.
And Insanity's Vigar, like, even back when he was playing in Amateur with 100 Thieves next, he was playing on, like, 80 ping. His Vigar was terrifying. He is, I think, a fantastic Vigar player.
He was like the original one, too. He was
Yeah.
doing it into his ears all the time, and this time we'll see what it is. Diplex, we saw him actually bring this champion out yesterday against Team Liquid, and it popped off even in a tough draft.
That's the biggest thing is I love to see that they're still opting into the Diplex matchups, right? They're still giving this guy props because he deserves it. He has come in. We were talking a lot about the sub-in of Spawn, but as well as Diplex, and replacing Jimenez is a big deal for us, right? And Jimenez getting a huge opportunity in LCS, but he came in and started smashing people right off the bat. And I think you get to see a lot of the strengths we've seen already in the LCS season from Diplex here.
Again, top to bottom, I think it really speaks to the quality of players. Like, even with the swaps they had, the fact they can come into Challengers and make finals. I gotta say, though, with this draft, C9, Dignitas is a comp that they need to push forward. They need to be ahead. Maokai does a really good job slowing that down. The block poke would be really tough for Dignitas to deal with if they do not get ahead. All eyes for me have to be on Dignitas these first few waves, and where Elise goes, because with that Renekton pick now on the top side, we're still expecting for Elise to get that red buff and go bot level 3, but you do have that option to go top as well.
That's a scary thing looking at this Dignitas composition for me. You can kind of go wherever. Elise has so much setup on the rest of the map.
And here we go for game number 1 of our North American Challengers League Grand Finals. We have Dignitas Challengers taking on Cloud9 Challengers for the crown.
And I think it's still so fascinating watching these two teams come in. They were our top dogs the entire split. It definitely felt as though they were in a tier all by themselves for so much of the regular season, and now they're here for the last part.
And I gotta say, for Dignitas, this is a bit, I want to say a little bit of redemption, because of course Dignitas that last year they did make Proving Grounds finals, you know, with subs, Perry stepping in.
Gamsu.
Yeah, they swapped a little bit with their LCS roster, and I know from talking with Insanity, the one member, like he was back, that roster wanted to play together with JJ. Guess what? It's the same 4 now with Diamond, who has the chance to take down his old org and the player that he used to play behind in Zeyzal to raise that finals trophy this time around. I know it's something that Dignitas is very hungry for. And also for C9, kind of a return to glory for them holding this trophy. They are the team that historically has been known for developing the most talent in NA, and they have their chance now to get back on top here.
Yeah, since 2021, incredible stuff to have made that journey to this point, right? And it is our number 1 versus our number 2 seed, so fitting in our grand finals, but it is about the journey here, right? A little bit of the early start conversation coming in. We do have the opposite side starts.
Curious.
Yeah, so, Spawn helping.
Yeah, I will say with Spawn helping and red buff, what I was expecting was Elise to go Raptors, red, Krugs, then walk bot. But with Spawn leashing, I think that it might be Elise working her way towards that top side, or again, looking to invade the Maokai on the bot side jungle, and it looks like Maokai is going for that reverse clear at the moment. So gonna work his way to get those bot camps and go back. So does put him in position to protect from a potential bot dive.
Yeah, and already we are seeing XU not even doing the Raptors just quite yet, just going red directly into the Krugs. He will not get level 3, and so that's drastically shifting it up. I mean, XU, we said that this was a team that really needed to try and find something early on. I'm very surprised that this is the route they are choosing to take, but they did spot Tomio going from one side of the map towards the other side, and it looks as though XU, we've seen some inventive things. In particular, Rosethorn and Yuji were good at going for crazy paths after doing this bottom side. I wonder if it's actually an opportunity for them to attack the mid lane.
And again, it's all about early eyes on XU. Where is he getting those resources going? You already see all the pings over towards Tomio's side, and I think this is the way that you put a crack in the armor of Cloud9 Challengers, right? If you can get under Tomio early, you can aggress him. They don't feel so stable coming into the early mid game.
This is okay, though, for the side of the Maokai and Tomio. He's got to sidestep that, alright? He's going to take a little bit of a
This is
shift,
okay as he takes the fangs to the mark.
At least he got his blue, and also by being here, he is protecting his bot lane from that dive that is so lethal when you have that Draven Thresh. So it's not like XU's going to get nothing. But as long as bot lane stays safe and they can actually eat this wave, it really isn't all that bad for C9.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that XU is going for this, I remember Concept spending a lot of time between games talking about how it's like, yeah, you invade Maokai, it's like, cool. Maokai's going to be fine later on. It's going to be really about how Elise actually dictates this early game, choosing to stick around, hopefully seeing that Tomio does actually back off. Could potentially give them a dive opportunity later, but it feels like a lot of time being spent for XU. It's not going to get a whole lot out of it.
Just getting a little bit of scuttle crab action there, but trying to weave a web between mid and bot lane so far. Trying to see if they can get this Draven ahead, because you have to. You have to get some resources here. We know what Zeri can do in the late game. We know what Lost and Zeyzal can do at all times. So it is an important factor for Dignitas.
I also want to C4 Dig, you know, thinking about Spawn. I think Spawn's biggest weakness in LCS was pretty clear. It was his laning phase. Playing this Draven, that is a big opportunity for him to kind of prove that he's grown as a player as well with his time in Challengers. I know his LCS debut wasn't exactly the start that Spawn wanted at the start of this year, but being able to pilot Draven would be big, as Insanity we could cut out here by Tomio, who's showing, but Tomio's level 3, doesn't feel confident enough now. Actually, he's on the top side.
Yeah, he might be able to find something. Still a little bit of a give and take in mid lane.
Yeah.
See a lot of pings, a lot of pressure towards top, a 2v2 up Bruin. So we should be going to see what's going on up this way. Who's going to pressure this wave here, knowing that XU's right around the corner. Vision from both sides, and a little bit of opposite side stuff from both these teams. Tomio should just wrap around and get back to top.
Yeah. Ends up getting out all right. That's another camp taken away by XU and a couple more wards, but Fake God is still getting away. They are doing a pretty decent job actually denying a lot of waves. Look at the CS difference in the top lane and the bottom lane that's already building.
And we haven't seen a dive or any action yet. You can still see the effect that Elise has on the early game in the first couple of clears, just dragging Malachi across the map. I think Tomio, he had to sack that Gromp and bot Crab to prevent from that bot dive. I think that's well worth it for C9, but even the response actually goes top. I mean, Tomio's still losing more.
And I love this response, at least in our first game from Dignitas, the way that they approach the draft, because again, we've known Cloud9 Challengers, once Zeyzal gets out onto the map, gets connected with Tomio, they become one of the most lethal duos and slash trios with Diplex in the mid lane that we've seen in Challengers League. And I think you have to find that in before Zeyzal can get involved.
Yeah. So we will see what it is that Zeyzal can do. They have been pushed back fairly far, and this is a great start again from Spawn and Diamond. They have opted into a very aggressive bottom lane, and again, looking at upper bracket last split or last week, it was a big spot for Spawn and Diamond to kind of showcase that they had developed a lot of synergy together, that their laning phase had become a lot better. And as you're talking about, one of the biggest questions we had with Spawn during their LCS career was how are they actually going to be developing this part of their game. Taking down Lost and Zeyzal, even this matchup, is still a big shout to them, but you got to take this lead and you got to turn it into something. Where does Spawn find that first kill? Do they get any dragons early on, or are they going to start playing for the Rift Herald?
And we really haven't gotten to see that influence just yet from XU. He's been waiting. He's been buying his time like a spider, like you said. Trying to weave the web, but can't find any prey just yet, just hoping that something can be caught in that trap. But it is especially now looking back up this topside clear for him, where he's looking, because Tomio's fine with it, right? Tomio's fine being a reactive gamer right now, and it is all on the XU side of things. Obviously, a pretty heavy trade topside.
Speaking of XU, is on that top side, not looking for the dive on the Cassante, as Hoon is called out. The Cassante likely to base in TP, but XU is here in time for that red buff that Tomio did start, so XU going to take that away, get himself even further ahead, as Tomio hasn't based since after he 3-camped and hovered around bot. And Tomio, again, getting dragged across the map here. XU using this Elise really well.
Yeah, and it's always interesting listening to other players talk about XU as well. Love him or hate him, every single player has had a strong opinion on him. We heard Draku being very impressed with XU, and it definitely feels as though this could be an opportunity for Dignitas to have a point of strength, and now he's coming top lane.
He finally finds a little bit of a trap to spring onto Fake God. This could be first blood, but beautiful all out. Brings him back into the turret. Now XU's getting a little bit low, but Fake God played that beautifully. Here. Tomio can capitalize on very low health members of Dignitas right now.
There you go.
There's a flash for XU if he wants to drag him back. It would have been a flash trade likely. I think Tomio not going in there is intelligent, but still it's another plate going over to Hoon. And keep in mind, Hoon is yet to burn that TP, so if Hoon is able to get back, Fake God, I like how Tomio's helping him shove out that wave, because it's going to enable Fake God to at least match, so he isn't at that item and health bar differential. So I feel like Tomio showing there, still okay.
And already, I mean, just as you were talking about before, the Elise having a great effect, if not on the kills, at least on the gold.
Yeah.
All the lanes, except for mid lane, have already started to build up a decent lead. This is one of the things that we were looking at with Cloud9 yesterday. Even though they were able to get some of the big leads, Team Liquid was so good at trying to find their way back in. And while it was Mir that we were looking at for Team Liquid yesterday, in this game, in this matchup, it's usually been Insanity who's been the big player, and he's been able to free farm.
Yeah, he's gotten a pretty even lane state there, but you're looking at all the kind of gold accrued passively from Dignitas. While we said we needed them to get some early kills, this is also something to have because it gives you pressure when you start looking at the objective, right? We have a Rift Herald up on the board, something to play around, but especially looking at these early objectives, looking at these early advantages for Dignitas.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I mean, you recognized it earlier, Joshi, the fact that Dignitas hasn't taken anything yet. Again, you do need to snowball this game ahead if you have this draft.
Ooh, another plate.
So, I mean, it's a lot of gold. It's not like Dignitas aren't winning. They are, but that Dragon Stack's to be a little bit delayed. A Rift Herald, could delay that first brick. I think Dig's happy with having all the lane shoved up, and now they have a couple resets in. They are going to get something, but it still is going to be a later Dragon Stack for Dig. I mean, a couple minutes behind. Again, a small victory here for C9.
Yeah. But the other thing that we have to kind of look at is this is exactly how Dignitas were winning so many of their games earlier in the split, especially when Tomo was playing with them. They had this full court press. We've been able to see that with Pryo in every single lane. XU is kind of unleashed on the map. He's taken a bunch of camps. He's constantly been looking for the dives. And Cloud9, they still have yet to try and find something on the map.
I do want to talk about some of the C9 windows because I think their windows do come with time. I mean, this is such an aggressive early game. It's Renekton, Elise, Draven for Dignitas. C9, they've got to wait until I think 2.5 items maybe, like 2 items to think about it, and a lot of it's going to revolve around the poke, slowing down the game as the Malachi LeBlanc, and trying to absorb things. So I still think C9 needs to wait for time. It's not like they're playing terribly right now. I think this is what we expect given the drafts, and so each all right is Diamond.
Engaged, the box comes out. There's the lightning crash.
2 fights.
See a potential regank from Tomio. Looks like that 2v2 maybe not
in the
gonna
tower,
win it, but there you go. Is this first blood? Oh my god, Diplex picks it up.
Great stuff coming through from Cloud9. Diplex stays alive, and there we see Tomio being thrown around like a Pokemon again. Go get him, root him down right there. Nowhere left for him to go, and Diplex able to come in for the kill.
Yeah, and Sanity's gonna want that one back, being cute in the turret. That was the big difference there. I mean, he was taking the trade because if he does get Diplex out of lane, it is a free Rift Herald, and that did go over to Dignitas, so it still is a win for them across the map. But, I mean, C9 can still eat that wave bottom after the Diamond engage, and that solo kill mid on LeBlanc. Again, if LeBlanc gets going, we saw what Diplex could do with that pick yesterday.
It's not easy for this comp to deal with it either, right? You don't have a ton of easy crowd control. It's a lot of skill shot crowd control that you do actually got to land on it. But Hoon, 4 plates, all to himself up in the top side. That's going to be where the bulk of Dignitas' early lead is, and XU not going to be able to find this dive.
And there's still a lot of strength in both of the side lanes for Dignitas, but the thing is that this kill here enables a lot of that reactive play that Cloud9 have already brought to the table and been doing so well with.
Yeah. Something I love about Insanity is we've seen this a bunch of times, is he's constantly throwing down that stun on where Diplex was, but Tommy coming through here, as you called out, knocked into turret.
Yeah, I mean, tower shot just going to be the big difference there for Diplex. It's funny, because Diplex actually found a solo kill yesterday with a spellbook Vigar with Ignite on APA in Game 1. Insanity trying the same tech here, it didn't work, and that's a big deal. I mean, Merc Treads does really help LeBlanc in this matchup. The MR is important, and Diplex, you can see how aggressively he plays. That chain hits.
And there's a little bit of gumption behind that as well. A rematch in the making here in our grand finals between these two teams, and I know that Insanity brought a huge point to make sure he can put down Cloud9 Challenger mid laners, and Diplex trying to get a little bit of response in that.
That was big, right? Insanity TP'd back. He is sent straight back to base by Diplex on LeBlanc. So, again, C9, we talked about how they had to wait for their time on the map to find any pressure. That kill mid, really big for Diplex to at least get C9 something where they might be able to get a little bit of control over River, one of the sides, and try to slow down what Dignitas is doing here.
Yeah. The big question for me is, will Cloud9 be strong enough to fight around this next dragon? They're looking for Tomio.
Hiding in the bush will be spotted out by the saplings. Here comes the Nature's Grasp, though, on top of the lightning crash. The repel comes out, but it's only a delay. As here comes some more damage from Cloud9. Diamond's already down. They might get that chain connect on XU. There you go. Diplex picks up another.
Already Cloud9 roaring to life with the ultimate from Tomio, catching out 2. We were wondering if the lead is going to be enough for Dignitas. It's not going to be enough now, as Cloud9, they give Diplex even more money.
And this is something at C9 we saw them do so well yesterday against Team Liquid. If you give them anything, it's a flash missing on the Thresh, and it's a kill mid. Guess what that means? Diplex gets to move first because he had Insanity back in base. No flash on Thresh. Zeyzal finds the connection onto his old Academy counterpart in Diamond, takes him down, and that's more gold for C9.
The max range Glacial Fisher, man. I love the minds that we have in the bot lane. This double duo here, Spawn, Diamond, Lost, Zeyzal, they have been some of the best we've seen in Challengers League, and just those little minute differences make the biggest difference.
I don't get to put on my #1 Brahmin A hat often, but I will say when Thresh is missing Flash and does not have Aftershock in this matchup, he does become paper. I love how he angled against the terrain. Again, some of the small things that these players do so well, there's a reason they're in finals. Love to see Zeyzal stepping up, as again, Zeyzal has been so fantastic this year and throughout this tournament for C9.
Yeah, this timer on the Rift Herald, though, as it is getting dropped, will get a couple of plates going over, almost exclusively to XU, it appears, but it's also a little bit late in terms of actually being able to reset with all the money. And so Dignitas, they want to fight with this dragon. They're fighting on whatever they have right now, and that is a spot where they do have some big items coming through, but there's so much money on Diplex, and Tomio already looking to potentially catch out somebody again.
Big Spotline playing very aggressively right there, but able to dissuade
All right,
a gank
XU.
in its own. Diplex trying to play out the event horizon. Waits it out beautifully.
Yeah, does a good job. The stun ends up landing on a minion, gets a big chunk back onto Insanity. Still relatively healthy with the Catalyst already coming through. You can see Cloud9 already first to the objective, and because Dignitas are coming from so many different angles, I'd be surprised if they actually tried to take this one back, and that is a big indictment here against Dignitas in the early game.
When you have Elise Thresh, you want to play for picks and skirmishes, not team fights, and C9 grouping up. I mean, they get it cleanly. They don't drop any waves for it. C9 are crawling back into this game. All it took was, one play, really. It's Diplex finding a kill mid, Dignitas not connecting bot, and all of a sudden C9, how much control they've gotten back is really impressive.
Yeah, the question mark becomes, you see how strong it is when Cloud9 are together, but you still have such individual leads in terms of CS and differential like that from Dignitas, and they still also have their insurance policy and Insanity in the mid lane. So
We also have to ask another question, Lennon.
A little bit of reaction here, though. Lightning Crash already comes through. Should be the repel to dodge that one out, but they could collapse.
Nice
as a dodge out there. XU, good stuff. He's got 8 legs. Makes
we got a couple of questions, though. We asked if Insanity will be the difference maker, but the other question we got to ask, we've been avoiding it. It's been 14 minutes lane. We got to look at the top lane again. Is it hooning time?
We got to go back to the island.
Yeah, he's up 22 CS.
Are there coconut drinks topped off?
That's probably. I don't know if he's playing pool party, but that is 20 CS leads, so 3 waves, and the entire turret that this Renekton already picked up.
He's not even warmed up yet, man. That jacket's still like 40% on, and he's already doing this in the top
I'm waiting for them to bring in the frap. That's what I'm waiting for. I need to see the frap.
I was really hoping that he'd play the Winter Gnar skin. I feel like that really fits given the extra buffer that Hoon has in the top side. But whatever he's doing up there, it's good stuff. Again, Hoon, such a big difference maker for Dignitas in that last matchup. Even Fake God recognized it. And I mean, Fake God, it's really tough playing against Renekton Elise, but losing your entire tournament turret 15 minutes.
Yeah, the tournament's not over yet. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how Dignitas rotates around the map for that, right?
Yeah.
I did see another tower go down as well bot lane, so that's 2 turrets already for Dignitas.
Both Hoon and Spawn are up about 1,000 over their lane opponents, whereas Digplex, similar lead here over Insanity, but there is a lot of scaling that Viger still has left to do. Also a lot of scaling left to do for the Zeri. So, I mean, it's 2,000 gold lead for Dignitas, very close to what they were looking at during the regular season, but they actually got to find these fights. And I think the big thing that I'm going to be paying attention to is what happens with all of the tribute stacks that Spawn has built up. If he cashes out on that, that could be enough to end the game as we're going for Herald.
I do want to amend the find the fights and say find the skirmishes. Speaking of this skirmish, Diplex is up here.
Got a little bit of a 2v1 action going on here. Maybe a little bit of extra love given to Cloud9, and Hoon will receive none of that. Shutdown goes over to Diplex.
That is a very fed LeBlanc, you guys. Diplex now with 3 kills, one of them being a shutdown. Already has the Loons completed. We were praising him earlier, but already another turret gone over to the Draven.
Tower.
Oh, that's 2 kills to Spawn right away.
That's so much gold
that is
going over as well. They will make it out as well. So a little bit of responses and a consistent gold lead for Dignitas.
Not the worst death in the world. As we do get into the mid game, I think there are a couple things that are really important here for C9. First off, Maokai's ability to scout is so important in this game. Because again, what Dignitas wants to do, it is Elise, Thresh, Vigar. It's all about playing for skirmishes, playing for picks, playing for chunk damage just like this.
Yeah.
A little bit of catch out under tower there. Nothing else left.
Yeah, so Maokai, his ultimate, that can break that, right? You can force an engage on this comp, and in the straight up 5v5, if C9's taking the fight on their own devices, I do favor them. But also, it's LeBlanc. LeBlanc has to be able to match that poke, not get caught out. She's very slippery, as you pointed out, Joshi. It's a lot of skill shots they have to hit, not a lot of point-and-click CC. I think that as the mid-game, we're going to see Dig try and 4-1, try and fight a lot of these picks with pockets of vision. Maokai's going to have to help play around that, and then Zipbox as well.
I mean, you say that, but another thing that I'm thinking about is exactly what we saw yesterday between Cloud9 and Team Liquid. Cloud9 might be the best front-to-back team fighting team in the entire league. They showed so much promise from that yesterday. Every single time against Team Liquid, they were winning those fights. But if it's asymmetrical, if there's a flank coming through, suddenly Cloud9 were not looking as good. Now, as I look at this, their best flanker is probably Hoon, and Hoon has not necessarily been known to go for these long flanks in the same way as some of Team Liquid.
I will say, though, I think we've already gotten to the point where Zeyzal's unlocked out of map, and that is where Cloud9 find their strength, right? And I'm looking for a step up from this veteran bot laner who was coaching last year to come in here and have those moments where he can catch out any flanks that could be a rise, but be able to pick apart the map.
I will say, too, Brahm's great for flankers, because guess what? You just got to auto him. They get stunned up, and yeah. So that is pretty good, especially because Renekton's going to be the one on the flank. Braum can deal decently well with that. Just slowing him down, stunning him up. So I think C9 does have a couple of answers. I think it's a great highlight, something Dignitas is going to need to do if they want a team fight. But again, it's just going to be about playing in lane, finding those skirmishes, and then when the minions are killed, dipping into that fog of war and really trying to catch out C9 as a couple seconds away from the dragon. Dignitas do have control. Saplings are scouting, but nothing significant yet for either of our teams. And Dig with a setup, that's tough to face check.
Whichever team starts stacking up these mountain dragons will also have a huge advantage. Concept of saying it's worth about 2,000 gold, a little bit less for every single player. And now Dignitas, they're here first.
Also, just, hold on, Banshee's burned. That's a small win here for Dig. Also, like, how little damage that Dig has in like an extended team fight. Like Mountain Dragon could be really big to help C9 kind of survive that. Some of the tankier members that they have, but at the moment will just be Dig getting that dragon. C9 has done a good job of slowing down the game, but it still is a 2k gold lead for Dig and 2 dragons.
Yeah, and they're using some of this pressure, especially from that mid lane, to get this second dragon under tow, get a little bit of stacking themselves. Next play I'm looking at, though, is Tomio with this Rift Arrow. They have a little bit of standing gold left on the map, and they got to be looking where to use this. We're already seeing a little bit of pressure from the top lane.
Yeah. How many stacks does Draven have at this point? Because, hook lands on his Azazel? Nothing.
Not going to go for it just yet. A little bit of nice surprise there.
It spawns on 2 items, though. I think the big question for this game is how quickly this turret in the mid lane does actually fall for Dignitas. As they start taking it down, the map starts opening up, and even with the powerful scouting coming through from Maokai, it's hard to focus on 2 sides of the jungle at the same time, and it does give Dignitas a lot more freedom to move, but I'm still impressed with the way that Cloud9 has played. Every single minute they're not dying, every single minute they're not giving something up is another minute that Lost has to scale.
I think Maokai ends up being really valuable at this stage of the game. Again, like the pockets you want to find is at least Thresh. You just throw a sapling, that's so good. Because not only do you get vision in that brush when you throw the sapling, but also the seconds that it lasts too, like nearly a minute. So even a wave like this, you're at least safe on one side just from the abilities you have and the vision. Going to really help C9 step up. They get a decent chunk of that mid-outer as each of these teams. Still going to knock down the other one's mid-outer turret.
When does Dignitas start getting desperate is kind of the question, right? They haven't gotten a single kill yet. They're still up 2,000 gold. They have to know they are technically winning in this game, but the later this game goes, the harder it becomes. And I wonder when they start forcing the Baron, actually.
So I think that's a good call. And the interesting thing for me about like Dig getting almost desperate, I think it's just the pockets of vision that they try and find. Because again, like the way they want to fight and trade, it's about, chaining that CC, finding that burst damage, and then chunking out one person. They don't want the extended 5v5. So, like, hitting the F button for them, it's not going all in, right? Like we see in a lot of games. And so I am kind of curious to see how Dig does navigate that.
And they are hitting those 2 item spikes. I know you had mentioned earlier, but you're at least 2.5 items now for spawn. But particularly that Black Cleaver now completed for Hoon. And I really want to start seeing that Elise Renekton combo come to fruition, because they can have such good decisiveness and catch out fights before C9 can get to this front to back that they know and love. Speaking of catching out, they actually can't get Tomio. What a beautiful flash.
Great flash from Tomio, keeping him alive from the whirling death spawn. Still not cashing in. That's got to execute at a really high number.
That is the play pattern, though. That's exactly what Dignitas is looking for. Just getting one member to base and then getting a wave in, using that to either hit a turret or then dip back into the fog of war and see if you can get another one.
Thing is, though, Fate God has now come to bear. See, Tomio coming out from base, but that'll be another outer tower to Dignitas, so taking home some of that gold.
That gives so much more freedom to Dignitas to start playing towards the Baron, start playing towards the Dragon as well. And you called it out, right? It's the correct play pattern for Dignitas to start looking for. am still questioning where Dignitas really starts fighting some of these. The fact that they finally opened up that mid lane gives them a lot more options, but it's not as though Cloud9 is really super worried about the Mountain Dragon stacking at this point.
This is where, like, you would have had to change up a couple other things. Like, you wouldn't have front line, but like the Fiora is nice because you can just stretch the map and then try and find pick poke and then just play like the 3 or the 4 in mid. But I mean, Hoon still has so much pressure on this Renekton, and for the side of Dignitas. Man, when can they cash in this Draven, man? Like, he's so far ahead.
That's
How
what I was gonna
many
say.
stacks do we have on
He's literally walking around just waiting to cash in all of his money.
He's got a bunch of government bonds, and what is that? Nearly 600, 585. What is that? 2.5 gold each time? Yep. What is that? That's nearly 1,500 gold that he's potentially sitting on top of the kill.
Yeah, he's already up like half an item or more on loss as well. So it would be a huge cash. It's something that Dignitas need to bring home, and it's something they need to start thinking about.
Yeah, so but with that in mind, the players that we always look at in these kind of games tends to be the shot callers, right? As we see, you know, about 1,400 gold already for Spawn. But it's gotta be Diamond Zazel, right? The two former Cloud9 supports. They played alongside each other, well, one behind the other for a long time, and the other one, Insanity, he's been a major point for Diamond to kind of bounce off of. I'm curious what they're actually talking about at this point, because Insanity's like, yeah, I'm chilling. I just keep farming.
So, I mean, at the moment, we're 50 seconds away from the Dragon. I think Insanity bases after this wave. It's just the 3-2-1 setup on the top side, so 1 minute out, crash that wave. Diplox does so successfully, and C9, they have decent control right now. As C9 walking into that bot side river, that is big. You do not want to be face-checking Thresh Elise. You want to force them to check you. C9 is doing a good job of getting that pocket for themselves to play through at the moment. We'll see if Dignitas has to actually play through bot or switch things up.
And try to find a way to have a little bit of vision control on the map to try to find those picks before the big 5v5s come up at all.
Tomio's here first already. I mean, this is where the other part of the sapling's being super valuable.
Insanity stayed for a bonus wave top. He does have Death Cap finish. That is a big spike on the Vygar, who of course has stacks of his own. But 5 seconds away. Because of that, they are now late to the objective. That's a good chunk from Diplox. That's a nice chunk from that Whirling Axe too, from the Draven.
Yeah, Banshee's Veil doesn't stop those auto attacks coming through. There's a hook.
The's the hook. There's the Event Horizon. Connects on the two. Well, you get a lot of the fake guys.
It's the Spawn.
Cashing in all that money, baby. Big buck.
Another one.
And they're looking for more.
Let's go.
Cashing in every single dollar that they had saved up.
It's the perfect play pattern. You catch one, you catch another. Dignitas find themselves another dragon, and Spawn cashes in 2,000 gold on over to Spawn. The player returner from LCS already popping up.
If you can't find the angles like that Tomio, all the Nature's Grasp, you were fighting front to back, but because of the pocket that Dignitas had, look at the terrain they got to play through behind the walls. Diamond was so safe throwing out those hooks. And also, one, this is the tankiest member of C9. Fake Dot's hooked up and he just gets one shot.
And Diamond coming in clutch with the setup, the Event Horizon from Insanity. We were asking for play calls to step up, and this is the moment.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I mean, so much crowd control back to back. They give it over to the Perfect Prison. 16:05
Oh my God,
coming
that's the most I've ever seen.
That's so much. But immediately afterwards, they're not done. As you were calling out, Cubby, they have a great setup where Cloud9 can't get back.
I want to credit Joshi for live math on air. I feel like 16:05 is kind of close enough, you know? That's tough to do.
Plus the 300 from the kill.
There you go, there you go.
Not bad. And that is pretty big now for Draven. As guess what? That Bloodthirster is finished. He's a full item ahead of this area. That's going to help a lot against LeBlanc.
And they are hunting now. They feel so rejuvenated back on the map for Dignitas Challengers. They are just looking for picks. They feel confident because they have so much gold now, and they have so much presence on the map.
I thought they would wait another wave, but they are going to be hitting now. Yeah, Zazel spots it. Elise does have some sustained with the spiders in the W, but it will not be it
Has Spawn back yet?
Yeah, he's got the Bloodthirster.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the big thing, right? I actually want to see them hit, right? Because when you force your opponent to come close to you, that's when the cage comes through. That's when these hooks start becoming a big thing. The cocoon really can start taking off.
He's almost at 4 items. My goodness, this is insane. For Spawn set up so much for success. And while Dignitas still have this insurance policy and Insanity, they found a lot of setup between the Event Horizon and the Death Sentence from Diamond, and it will not stop now. Cloud9 still have a lot of strength through Diplex. You can still have a lot of plays with the catch out in that front to back we had always mentioned, but now it's a lot harder to execute.
Good hit on Diplox. He does have level 16. That's really big for the Blanc, but this is getting burned down fast. Already at half.
Try to get in there, do something actually very low. There's the Nature's Grasp across the bow. Will connect onto Diamond. The Event Horizon is down now. Cloud9 should feel a little bit more confident to step up. They do deny Dignitas from doing the Baron, though.
Yeah, and those ultimates will be down for a little while. There is another opportunity, but Dignitas chunked out pretty heavily. Didn't have Hoon with them. No real opportunities for a flank. So it is a little bit of time that Cloud9 does buy back for himself, but it's not as though Dignitas don't have nothing to play for. The entire Mountain Soul with 3 Mountain Dragons is insane.
I mean, at least Dig can just reset and just go back to that, right?
Yeah.
As you called out, as long as... it was a nice chunk that Diplex found onto XU, but that is something that Dignitas, they can rinse and repeat and try and fish for those picks. Also, I just want to say Thresh itemization as well. Some of the changes that we have seen to that support item actually viable now, and especially with the Thresh hooks, you know, coming out every second or two. If you keep on landing them, you can do some nasty things with that damage increase, helping with that, you know, Vigar upfront damage, the Elise upfront damage. I do like that optimization from Diamond. Pretty standard on Thresh, but still, I think worth the highlight.
Yeah. I also want to point out the fact that Insanity, he's choosing not to go with the other item that makes him super tanky, right? He's not going for the Seraph's Embrace, instead going directly for the Void Staff. This guy is here to kill people. And already we're seeing a third item coming out from Lost, as well as the Navori is completed. But Dignitas, how did that chain miss?
They just really want to kind of get a little pressure around this Baron buff here, and I don't know if Cloud9 can answer.
It's at half. They know they got to burn TP, at least from Fake God. I think Dignitas just wanted to pull that for the Dragon setup.
Yeah. It's about getting resources before these setups again and again.
And as they're starting to move back and forth, you can already see how Dignitas can move between the objectives relatively cleanly. They have so much control over these chokes, especially since we're on a mountain rift, right? Those chokes become even tighter. Dignitas, as long as they keep Cloud9 here, you see there's no vision for Cloud9 on the other side of the map.
And Diamond has been using those chokes very well for the death sentences. And again, Cloud9's mental will be tested here. Can they stop Dignitas from doing this Baron? This has been a dance we've seen 3 times in a row now.
If Dig keeps pulling them to the Baron, they're also getting mid lane priority because no one can walk through that choke given the Vigard cage. So Dignitas doing this has actually gotten them Dragon priority. It's 40 seconds out. Now, C9, of course, this is giving away Soul. If they do give this to Dignitas. So C9 want to play for the Baron. It's very risky as Diplex and Tomio are very far north. If Dignitas keep them here, they have first move for that Dragon.
Yeah, so, Spawn.
Oh.
That's a lot of damage, man. I just say, you know, when you throw axes at people, that's what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever gone axe throwing, but you got to be careful with those as we see them moving over to the Mountain Soul.
It's free.
Literally.
Dignitas are playing this out so beautifully. I mean, this is why I think Dignitas is such a scary team, because not only can they full court press you, but we saw them, you know, C9 found a couple angles. They got a few kills. They made a couple mistakes. But what you're able to do still is Dignitas, they're playing this out so well as C9 is their only option, their last resort.
Cloud9 are trying to pull the Baron. They're trying to pull the attention of Dignitas, which they have rightfully done. There's the re-engage, and now Insanity, he might be tanky, but he still goes down to Lost. And that 3 item spike being utilized real well. Cloud9 back on the Baron.
At Cloud9, they're going to pick up the Baron, but it is going to be an exchange for the Mountain Soul. Cloud9 have bought themselves another 3 minutes of the game at least with that pick.
Yeah, a little bit of an oopsie there from Dignitas on the Lantern. Nature's Grasp, pretty big ultimate. Went to the Renekton, probably should have went to the Vigar. Insanity falls, will be a trade. C9 gets something.
Really good decisiveness from C9, and they tried to kind of hold the attention for Dignitas. They didn't want to give anything up, and I think that's highlighting a little bit of that shot calling, a little bit of that kind of hierarchy within Cloud9, and coming from a lot of the experienced members that are on this team.
Other thing I kind of want to look at here, though, for Cloud9 is we've spent so much time talking about how Diplex is going to be playing this game. Is on 3 items now, but really the player that we got to start looking at even more is Lost.
Absolutely.
Now on 3 items here on the Zeri is going to be the primary person that you need to watch to see if you can actually chew through that crazy amount of resistances that Dignitas have built up with these 3 mountains.
All right, good news for C9. They only have 1 tower, so with Baron, you got to imagine at least the 2 outers are going to fall, maybe an inner or 2. So they could close the gold gap. We do favor C9's comp like later, especially in these straight-up 5v5, where we have seen if they do get a clean engage, it is really tough for Dignitas. Just about Dignitas controlling the areas of the map they need to control. And Dig, see how frisky they're feeling here on Diplex, but he has a control word, so gonna be nice and safe.
And the Veil.
Yeah, and I mean, we're gonna have pretty close spawns here for our monster objectives, with Baron spawning a little bit earlier. I think that C9 will pick up some gold for that, but see how many picks Dig can get besides that, because I think we have to wait for the objectives to come up before we get more action.
And this is a lot of standing gold that's being picked up on the map by Cloud9, and I think something we've said the entire time was that Dignitas really needed to have an advantage coming into the present game. They needed to have a lot to say, and then while they have had a lot to say, they already have the Mountain Soul, things like that. It's where Cloud9 are starting to get to their strengths.
It's also worth noting that one of the things that we really prided Dignitas on during the season was their ability to play a variety of different styles, right? They could play this really early game, but it's not as though they are limited to playing in that style. However, the problem that I am starting to see with this composition is where's your engage, right? It's going to be mostly diamond fishing for all of these hooks. Actually, you can go for some cocoons. If either of them lands, you can alpha strike a single target, but you need to do that. And Cloud9 just starts throwing out the Nature's Grasp, but they start using Glacial Fissure, creating a ton of space. It's a lot harder for Dignitas to even walk up to kill that one person.
And engage is C9 engaging on them, right? It's just, you know, throwing some skill shots out after, it's okay. So we can see Diplock still getting some damage down with the Mountain Soul and
Hoon getting a little bit of focus here. The Nature's Grasp coming across. They find him under tower as well. The Ultra Shock Laser does a decent amount. Knockback not enough to get him into range. Hoon will stand untested as the Baron buff push from Cloud9 trying to get some damage on the tier 2 tower.
At least the one nice thing about Mountain Soul for C9 is at least you have Zeri, you know?
True.
Yeah, small victories. Woo!
Silver linings.
Yeah. I'm honestly really impressed. This is how the game one between these two teams is going. We're seeing a lot of pressure between them. Dignitas absolutely coming into game one and just asking Cloud9, hey, can you deal with us just throwing everything at you in the first couple of minutes? And Cloud9's like, yeah, you know, we can do that. We've seen that one before. The question then is if Dignitas can still win anyway from that position. It's a ton of extra confidence for them going into the rest of the series to continue playing this style.
And the biggest thing I always want to bring back to is that there is a decent recent track history between these two teams, right? This is a rematch, right? Dignitas is the team that knocked Cloud9 down at the lower bracket. They had to go through Team Liquid Challengers to make it to this point, and you've got to see how they've been and broken from that point to rebuild themselves to a Grand Finals caliber team.
And I know that this is what Dignitas was expecting. Like when I was like going over like the VODs of the games, you know, people were asking them like, sometimes like they hang out. People were asking like, hey, who are we gonna face in finals? They're like, C9. We're gonna face C9. Like they knew that they took down the team that they felt like was either the best or second best to them. So I think they were really looking forward to this rematch. As Diamond put it, you know, I have to go through the org that did treat me well in order to get the final. He's like, yeah, it's bittersweet, but I got to do it, right? Yeah. So I think, again, a lot of respect between these two teams.
Yeah, business is business. It's also worth noting that we know both these teams were kind of built with the idea of winning the Challengers League in the first place. Dignitas outright saying it. Cloud9, it's been their MO for the past couple of years, doing quite well, going deep every single time.
Oh, they're going long flank here onto the Cassante.
The Nature's Graph stops any of that here. Be connecting on a couple members. Fake God still in a little bit of trouble. Cassante so uses the all-out just like we saw earlier, getting out of the box from Diamond.
Didn't look great, but he got a flash. So, I mean, did get something. And folks, if game one hasn't been fun enough, I know, you know, it's only 7 kills. Mazel, it's not your favorite. But we do have both monster objectives spawning within 3 seconds of each other to wrap things up. As Elder will be on the map in a $1.15, Baron in a $1.10, and folks, gonna have to see what happens there and which side of the map Dig really chooses to focus on because they need the pockets.
And what I love is the dance that we just got around the Baron earlier, because that shows the caliber these two teams are bringing to the table today, and I think it's so fitting for our grand finals that we get a lot of this kind of bend and break mind discussion between these two teams around these objectives, and this one going to be oh so more important now.
Yeah. How much AP is Insanity sitting on? Oh, hook lands?
Not the person you want to hook.
Not
the person
not the greatest target.
You practice your hooks into trees. You don't go for the kills into trees.
I don't know, man. They hooked Cassante last time and one-shot him, so...
True.
I think Diamond can hook everyone right now, and Dignitas is okay with that.
But how much damage is the comments from Insanity going to actually be doing, right? Every single time he throws one out, it is going to be chunking. But it looks as though Dignitas, they are opting a little bit more for the Elder Dragon. They are creating space around that. They know that they have more DPS against these monsters than Cloud9 does. We're seeing Diplex, he's going for the chunks. He's getting some pretty decent ones, but he's taking them right on back.
Oh, Tomio going for the decisive play, but he gets dragged down. Now both going golden. Insanity gets back to the back line. Tomio not going to go down just yet, but it's Hoon in the back line. So much up, and it's in Hoonin time, baby! Because Dignitas get 1 minute traded back here. It's a 4v4, but a reset coming through from Dignitas. They're going to try to TP back. No, it's not enough, though, as now they're running for the hills. You got Spawn doing the red buff, and Dignitas, I think they should make it out.
Dignitas, they're on the run. We're seeing what they can actually do, but Cloud9, they haven't started up the Dragon just quite yet. They want to get these kills, but Spawn's full HP.
Who needs to get it back? He needs to get a TP back in, but there's not enough time. He needs
Lost?
to heal up somewhat. They need some sort of front line. It can't just be Spawn. As now the repel comes through, XU have flash. Diplex goes for the kill, and Diplex is ruthless. As now he tries to find another one. He's taking on the team now. He goes down to Hoon, and a shutdown to the Renekton.
It's a 2-for-2, guys. We gotta reset. We're gonna get that one again.
I know that Diplex took down the jungler. I don't think that was worth it, though, as he had TP. If he's able to get back, if they weren't able to corral XU, there is a world
Look how much damage
they
he does.
could keep them as... I mean, he has BT. He could stay here forever, but Lost is back. He has the Bloodthirster as well. Stopwatches were burned. That's going to be a big thing for the next fight. Also, Summoner check. No flash onto Spawn. He must have the Lantern in the next fight. That's big. Insanity went down, but he still does have his flash.
Yeah, no teleport from Insanity either. Diplex does, and we're seeing Cloud9. They're the ones here first. They're going to be starting up the Elder Dragon.
Oh, we got another
Round
fight.
2 fight as Dignitas come in to challenge Cloud9's Elder.
Nature's
There's
Grass.
the Nature's Grass coming across. 8,000 health here. Big Ultra Shock laser, but they don't have the cooldowns. Remember, we just burned this on this big fight. There's an unstoppable chain. Thank God, big event horizon. Does catch out Lost.
They go!
DC, they can't get the damage down. Lightning Crash does connect. You got the all out from Big God to bring Hoon back.
They got him!
That's 1,000 gold for Hoon! And you get so much gold given over to Renekton in both these fights, and an Elder to Dignitas. Oh my God, it resets there. Hoon getting so low.
The difference maker in the early game, it was Hoon on his own, and in his own time in the backline, he finds Lost as the Renekton somehow scaling. Hoon managed to take down the Zeri. They get Elder, they get Baron, Dignitas, they're set to take this game.
And he just walks up and down smashes her. Like, I don't know what to say. He walked up slowly and stunned them right in the middle of the team. And now Dignitas, they're moving over to the other game-ending objective. They have the Elder. Cloud9, Tommy has no men and no flash. There's no way to steal.
I mean, it was set up by the event horizon, but Hoon just walking forward knew that he had to give himself for the Zeri. And the fact he managed to find it in the backline after he was K'Sante ulted over the wall was major in that fight. Gave C9 no chance to answer back as the Zeri was down. C9's hopes were dashed, and Dignitas now, they're double buffed up.
And we've talked so much about Hoon throughout this split, his come up here, Hoon in time week over week, but it is moments like this that you
watch him
prove all
walk
that
forward
talk.
here. This is the big thing, right? They land the hook onto Fake God, but Lost walks up, and then Hoon, he just walks up slowly, stuns them right there, and Lost, even though they have this huge shield, they try and get their way out. Hoon all by themselves takes them down, and as you said, is able to get out. Now Dignitas, they really need to win on this push.
Unfortunately there for Lost, a little bit of a Gala moment as he jumping into Renekton. That's a bit of a bummer. As you know, the Gala's having an incredible split. The Gala's area though sometimes Bizel. You know, we go a little forward.
Sometimes a little bit forward, but the thing is, the pressure does not relent here. Cloud9 are on the back foot, and they're about to be knocked into the dirt for game number 1. Dignitas are banging on the door.
Dignitas, they have just under a minute left on this Elder Dragon. If they don't win on this push, though, it's a lot of money. The items will equalize, and so they got to find it all in here, and they got to find it quick.
Gotta try to do something, but you got the double super buffs coming in here for Dignitas. There ain't much left, but one more team fight. Here comes the Nature's Grasp across.
Thank God.
Get the nice shutdown here, maybe, if they can find anything, but thank God gets Elder Dragon wings, and they got one. How many pairs are we gonna see today in game 1? There's a couple more for you, as game 1 is done and dusted. Cloud9 are no more, and Dignitas go 1-up in the series.
What a great start coming through from Dignitas. They need to find that fight. They find it. It took a lot longer than I think they were hoping to, but man, you can't argue with the results. Just fighting these small team fights, and we're setting up for Insanity. We're setting up for Spawn, but it's in the end, it's Hoon again. Who finds it?
Somebody brought him his frappe in the middle of it. It's not there. Don't worry about it. But it was incredible stuff from game number 1 of Dignitas. It was the way they approached it from draft to finish that really shone out.
I mean, I think the creativity of Dignitas too. This is a team that does have experience. You credit them for playing a lot of different styles. They can. That is a comp, again, Renekton, Elise Thresh. On paper, you're like, this does not scale at all. But with the Vigar, the way they were able to play that with the picks, the pockets, and just waiting for the event horizons, we credited Insanity for being one of, if not the best Vigar players that we have in the league. I think he really proved it there. Dignitas really showed how intelligent they are as a team. They put C9 in the box that game. Really tough to get out.
Luckily, we got a best of 5 for Cloud9 to try to come back into. We're going to take a little break. We're going to sit it off. And on the other side, we have Kangas for a little bit of a Rally Cry halftime show.